Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be on right now. It's been a couple of weeks of excitement, getting prepared, and I've done a lot of things in my life, but this has got to be close to the top.
Thank you, and Reader's Magnet, and thank you, John, for putting this forth and taking the chance on us authors in presenting this out to the world.
I've enjoyed this immensely, Joanne.
Ellie, so have I. Thank you for who you are, and thank you, Reader's Magnet. You all are beautiful, and you've worked so very hard, and we are blessed.
We are.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. We thank Reader's Magnet and everybody that's involved. I love Reader's Magnet. They say, we share your stories with the world.
Hello. Great afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for coming by my booth to hear from me today. So my name is Denise Harvey, and last week I started with reading my very first book, which was Growing Up Sassafras, and I did finish reading this one on Monday. And so now what I did was I also started focusing on Emergence of Me, and I just want to go ahead and continue sharing a little bit about Emergence of Me, discovering my identity and courage within, and where I was in my life and why I wrote this book. I'll go ahead and read the back cover, even though I already did that on Monday, but still, I want to go ahead and make sure that I'm just kind of recovering everything. So I start off with my favorite scripture, which is Psalms 37:4, which says, "Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart." This story is about myself, a little girl in a huge world, attempting to understand who I was and my place in this not so friendly world. This story addresses the life questions I never received answers for as I grew up. I was searching to find my place in this world. I was trying to be everything to everyone except myself. I was completely lost in this crazy and often cruel world. Just as I learned who I am, you can too as well. You must speak to your own heart and believe it for yourself, that you are blessed and highly favored of the Most High God. We are all victorious and overcomers if we only believe. You must see your greatness in front of your own eyes. So on Monday, I had started with the very first chapter when I was a little girl, and just kind of going over the fact of how I did not really have the understanding of what it felt like to be loved, what it felt like to have your parents continuously telling you that you're awesome, that you're the best, that you're beautiful, that you're loved, that we love you, that we thank God for you. Didn't have any of that. Don't remember any of that. Now, that does not mean that that's not how they felt, but you know what? It's important to affirm these things in ourselves, and it's important to affirm these things for our children. And so for me, it felt like I was so stuck in trying to please everyone and just be a good girl and just try to do what I knew was right, long as it helps someone else, and just be the things that I knew to do was to be kind to others, to love on others. But I wasn't necessarily always doing that for myself because I didn't feel that I was worthy of those things. And so at the very end of the first chapter, I just want to read this one page here. It says, how do you think others see you? And should that really matter, or should it even matter to you? The important question is, how do you see yourself? Do you value who you are as a person that God created you to be? That is an important question. Do you see yourself through the eyes of Jesus? You are a child of God. He loves you, and He loves me more than we could ever even imagine. And I had to learn to understand, Denise, you really are loved. And even when you don't hear it, you have to believe it for yourself. And that was a long process because, of course, I was way much older when I actually received that revelation and believed that revelation. Because as a child, I did not believe that. Well, actually, I did believe it. All I knew is that Jesus loved me, but I did not hear it from my parents. Unfortunately, when we do not understand who we are in Jesus and that our identity should line up with Him, we will continue to feel lost and confused, lacking the understanding of what we should be doing with this life that God blessed us to live. Our dreams matter. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts your thoughts. And this is out of the book of Isaiah. And so I didn't even want to go ahead and touch on every single chapter. The next chapter of this book was called Approval Means Too Much. And the subtitle is Misguided Perfection, because that's where I saw myself. And that's where I believe that if I made you happy and that you liked me, that I was doing a really, really good thing. And so I started talking about my transition in adulthood. My transition into adulthood came at the same time as I got married and became a military spouse. So with me, that was a whole lot to happen at one time, especially the military part and, moving away from my family to another state and just myself and my husband and us two having to work through, number one, being married, being a new couple, and also being a part of this military community that was so strange and so scary for me. And I'm sure it was for my husband too, since he was the active duty member. But I wanted to go ahead and read something that I thought right here was kind of important, especially as I look back. I was literally trying to tag different pages and just trying to go through it. I actually bought back so much as I started reading it because I started tagging a lot of pages and I thought, well, I can't tag the whole book, but I still really wanted to just speak about some things that really spoke out to me and spoke out to from my heart. And I said down on page 20, I wanted to do my part. I wanted to stay connected and stay involved. I made sure that I would attend all military spouse related events orchestrated by my husband's squadron, which may not have always been necessary for me, but because I believe it was not only important, but expected as well. As I said, I wanted to do my part. And in my mind, I had these high expectations that we needed to strive to be this perfect family, attempting to make the right decisions to receive the best possible outcomes, believing that there was nothing wrong with striving for perfection. How much better is it to please the Father instead of always trying to please people? That was huge for me. However, the striving that I was aiming at was to please people and gain acceptance. And that's where my life was me feeling that I wasn't enough. And enough for what? Enough for who? Those questions always come back when that question of are you enough comes up to me, or that I think, or that I hear other people saying. I thought this was what a person had to do. And I know I'm not alone. We all perform for others without even thinking about it. We wear multiple hats, and a lot of us know what hat to put on, depending on what circumstance we're in, or the people that we're around, or the friends or the family. Whether it's have fun, be relaxed, or whether it's I have to put this face on and this bright smile and perform the way that we're expected to, even in church. And that was another thing that occurred with me and that I was writing here about. And so as I continued on, here's another point that I said that, like every other person, I understood which performance was needed and at which time. The real me was unsure of what to do in every situation. The real me did not know where to turn or who I could turn to. The real me knew that to get along, I had to pretend to understand, even when I did not. That the perfection that I was seeking was not after God. It was not to pattern myself after our perfect and gracious Father. At this time, I did not know or understand this life principle. What I was seeking was the approval of others, approval to let me know that I was accepted and enough in their eyes, when all that will ever matter is the love and approval of God. Yeah, I was, just like so many people do today, we're working to, become accepted by this group of people or that group of people. Or, if I'm friends over here, then maybe I'll be able to achieve even better. Oh, well, if I'm over here, like at your job, maybe I'll even be able to get a promotion because after all, they like me, and that's kind of where my life was, just like so other people's lives are. How awesome would it be for us to all understand that only what we do for God matters? This is the real approval. It does not come from people who do not care, may not like you, and definitely will never appreciate and celebrate you in the manner that one should. Life lessons are a process we all grow through, some faster than others. And then the word I put down here after this is Galatians 6:9. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose hope. And so I started talking about an incident that occurred. Most people of a certain age do, and I would hope so, remember Desert Storm in 1991, because at that time we were actually stationed in Turkey. And so I wrote down here that things happen in this world that may make us wonder if this is the end. And I remember being over, because we're overseas, you're in the country of Turkey, you're so far away from everything you grew up with, everything your family, and you have all these scary things happening. And here we are right there in Turkey, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, is this the end? Especially when, the war actually started and there's bombings and everything, kind of like what's continuously going on right now in the world today with Russia and Ukraine. And so I said, I remember a very scary time in our life in 1991 during Desert Storm while we were stationed at Incirlik Air Base, Turkey. All the active duty personnel had to stay in the country, and all the family members evacuated back to the United States. I will never forget standing in a processing line, knowing that the war was breaking out not far from Turkey, praying that we would make it out okay. This memory will never leave my mind. My son and I were on what's called Chalk 19. That was the number of the plane that we were evacuated out on. I would never forget that. They're numbered as they're bringing all these different airplanes into the country to evacuate all the family members and civilians out of the country for our own safety. So let's see. My son and I were on Chalk 19, which was the number of the flight we were assigned on to fly out of Incirlik. How mind-blowing it is that to this day, I still remember the entire life-changing event, including the number of the plane we were assigned on to travel on. Chalk 19 was loaded with families and children and mothers trying to entertain the children, not knowing what was waiting for us when we would eventually reach back to the United States. Just as leaving a family member during war was scary, being sent back to the United States was as well. It was even more so during September 11, 2001. My family and I had just relocated back to the United States from Okinawa, Japan. We loved living in Japan, but it was time to go. When 9/11 occurred, I will never forget the fear, the disbelief of what I was watching occur right before my eyes, just like everybody else in the world. I remember in Turkey when we were put on the bus to leave, to go to the airplane. And I remember standing there, and I remember my husband being on the outside of the bus with all the other active duty members watching as their family members were carted off away to a plane. I remember being on that plane. I remember that plane was packed with children, and my son at that time was only 5 years old. And I remember children crying and screaming. There was just a lot of activity there, so much uncertainty, going on for those 19 hours of flying back to the United States. And I do remember we didn't even fly. Of course, we didn't fly straight back. We actually had to stop off and then we continued on. But I remember the flight crew trying to entertain all the children and family members on the plane, and they had loads and loads. Back then, VHS tapes, of movies, continuously playing for all the children on board. So those type of things were situations that, my gosh, they're so hard to live through, but we do live and we grow through them. You know, um, especially when you know that you're being separated from your spouse because more time, like so many other military families go through. You just continue to pray through it. You don't watch the news continuously because, after all, it will scare the life out of you if that's all you're sitting there doing is watching the news and watching the doom and gloom that's being played out on the television. But you continue to trust and hope in Jesus for your safety and for their own safety, and that you will be reunited again, which we praise God. And so after this here, I was just talking about disappointments and rejection and talking about how in life these things happen. Disappointments as well as rejection in a well lived life cannot be avoided. If you think they can be avoided, definitely that's a delusion, because it's going to take place. It's going to happen, like I said, in a well lived life. Even in one that's not so well lived, it cannot be avoided. I desire not to disappoint, even though I did not like all of us do it at all time again and again. I learned early to not always share those disappointments. I cannot say that I knew to take heart of those hard lessons and make a better decision and do what I knew to do best. Most of the disappointments in my life came from me not taking the chances or missed opportunities. It also comes from making wrong or faulty decisions. The disappointment, the disappointment rides on the shoulders of whatever event or circumstances falling apart. Disappointments hurt events even more when it's derived from trusting others, allowing others to enter and get close to our heart, only to feel the sting of betrayal. Believing someone when they stated they would do what you needed them to do, lied about, is tough. It is not easy as offering up forgiveness, but it is necessary to move on in life. It is necessary for you. The hurt, the brokenness, it's better for you to forgive and begin the healing for your life and for your good. So I kind of stuck disappointment in there because at one point I started talking about life's disappointments. Even with what we were going through as a family, having to move all the time and make those decisions and try to make the best of the life that we were given and the life that we had. It doesn't mean that it was always perfect, and it doesn't mean that it was always right, but it was still something that we, like most families, have to go through. And so I continued to talk about being disappointed and what that did for me and what that meant for me as I explained it out, from going to college to dropping out of college, still trying to figure out who I was. My goodness, still trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do with my life on this earth that I've been given. Surely I knew in my heart, surely there was more to it than what I was currently doing. Um, Surely there was more that I was required to do, or I should have been, required to do. And that's not to say that I was not a happy person or a content person. I just felt that there were things missing. There was something that I should have been taking advantage of that I wasn't. And so I kept writing about that part there. And then the next chapter I actually did talk about was, who do I believe I am? And so I start this chapter off with speaking about, where lies your belief? Help my unbelief. And so I thought this page here was very important. I said that many children and families are destroyed by their beliefs and lack of understanding of who they were created to be. I'm going to stop right here, put my finger right here so I don't forget where I am. But this is where I was for a long time, because my family didn't have this type of belief. I didn't come from a family who um, spoke the positive affirmations in one's life that we need to hear. Speak encouragement, speak love, speak understanding, speak those proud moments. I didn't have that. And so therefore, what we don't know can hurt us. And just like what we don't do what we do and don't do can also hurt us. So that's where my lack of understanding of who I was created to be came into play, and it took me a very long time for me to figure it out. So I continue to write here. It took me a very long time to realize, understand my identity and gain confidence. And now that I have and who God called and created me to be, it was a long lesson in reprogramming my mind to understand who I consider myself to be. Why that was, and then understand I am not what others believe or declare to my own identity. When you believe that you cannot accomplish something in life, more than not, you will not. Whether you can believe it or whether you don't believe it, it's going to take place. So then I said, as parents, we need to speak into our children before they even enter the world. We need to not only call them forth, but we need to speak out who God created them to be. We need to declare their gifts and the promises of God over them instead of speaking curses out of their mouth over the little blessings that we have been given. Often I find myself witnessing parents out with their children, and I have witnessed children called names and even cursed at right there in the store, whatever happened. The first thing that crosses my mind is that this is how they're treated and spoken out in public. Then there's no telling what's taking place inside of the home. I remember a couple of years ago, and this I literally remember this is it hasn't been that long ago when the flu was running rampant through our community. And actually, this was right before COVID had broke out. Medical professions were stressing about not covering your mouth and with your hands, but sneezing into your elbow or tissue. One day I was walking into a store and a mother and her children were walking out, excuse me. The little boy sneezed but did not cover his mouth. Immediately, his mother yelled at him. And this is what she said. She said, "Boy, I will snatch your lips off if you don't cover your mouth." I literally stopped with my mouth open and I stood there and I looked and I thought, and I felt so bad for the little boy because what that taught me was that he was probably never taught the right way. We still have to teach our children. And so I sat down here. Not only did she scare this little boy, but the mother also scared and stunned me speechless. The first thing that came to my mind was, did you teach him and speak to him about the correct way to sneeze, to cough, or to wash his hands? Or are you assuming he should know? By her tone, both he and his siblings were more than likely they heard this type of language all the time. My heart went out to him as our eyes looked, and he did. The poor little thing looked at me, and I looked at him, and I prayed that he saw that. I was like, "Oh God, I'm just praying for you," because I felt really bad, and I think he was probably scared, more scared than he was embarrassed. I attempted to give him a compassionate nod, wa- wanting and praying it would be okay for him. Yet I'm sure this is the life he continued to endure until something changed. Children need parents to not only love them, but they need to train and guide them for success. They must speak into their children, call out their babies who they are and are to be in life. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. You are creating your world with the word come out of your mouth. If you want success, speak success. If you want to achieve all that God has already placed in you, begin to believe it. And more importantly, begin to speak it out of your mouth, regardless of what it looks like in the natural. When I say life and death is in the power of the tongue, that's what the word of God says. When I said that you're creating your world with your words, we replicate just as God created the world. Therefore, when we're believing and speaking negative things out of our mouth, that's what we're speaking into existence. So if you're saying, and I'm like negative, you hate this is wrong, I'm sick, all kind of negative stuff like this, you're literally speaking that stuff out. So that's what's being created. So what you speak today, 5 years ago, that's what you're walking in. So I used to always say to my kids, and I know that they used to always kind of look at me when I would say it. Whenever they would say something, even my husband, and I know he's going to be watching this, but I would literally say to them, is that how you want it? Because they would say something and I would stop and I would say, is that how you want it? And they would kind of stop. Speak it the way you want it. Speak what you want to see happen. Don't speak words, idle words out of your mouth just because, and that's because the world does, and this is what everyone says, and oh, it doesn't mean anything. Every word out of your mouth means something, and every word out of your spoken out of your mouth will come back in some form or fashion. So speak it the way you want it. You want to speak affirmations about your life, your children's life, your family. I am successful. I am blessed and highly favored. I can do all things. My life is great. I am doing all the things that I'm created to do. I can make it. I can achieve it. I can do it. Even if you don't see it in the natural, you want it to actually take place. So speak it the way you want it. Don't speak negative things about your children and to yourself. And that's what I mean when I said in here that you are creating your world with your own words. Okay. And then I said here, do you know what you see? Do you know what you see does not have to stay the same? Because it can be changed with what you say. It does not have to continue going in that direction that it is traveling, but you gotta speak it. You have to declare for it to change. If you do not begin to change what is coming out of your mouth, one thing is for sure, you'll continue to have what you say. As the world you have created, as the world you have created is what you will continue to exist for you. Change your thinking, change you, believe, and change your words. And then I put down here John 10:10, the thief does not come except to steal, kill, and to destroy. I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. And so down here, I continued with your words because for me, um, the words you speak are so important. What you speak out of your mouth and what I speak out of my mouth, what you speak out of your mouth, and what we believe is more important than anything else anyone else is speaking to you. The conversation that you have in your head, those things that you kind of ponder on, those things can change your attitude, it can set your mood, and then it can actually set the things that start coming out of your mouth. And that's kind of what I wanted to portray right here in this chapter here, this subchapter here. And this is all about words and all about how I had to learn this for myself. I had to learn that the things that I believe about myself, if I continue pondering on it, it changes my attitude. For the good or for the better. And so a lot of times, and I can remember there was a time in my life, and I always think back to this, where I was having negative thoughts, and it was about my husband or an argument or something like, let's say we might have had. And this is what I noticed: the more I concentrated on something that may have happened, it started to set my mood. And so that can be a very dangerous thing. And it was unfortunate, but I thank God that I realize that now you cannot ponder and think about so much negativity and allow those thoughts to take control of your mind. As they take control of your mind, they then can excuse me, take control of the words that you're saying out of your mouth. And that's what you have to guard. You have to guard your heart and guard your mouth at all costs. Okay. And then of course, yeah, I guess I did do this. I wrote down here about the conversations in your head. And let's see, I said, have you ever had a conversation in your head to the point where you get upset and start thinking negatively about the situation or the individual without even realizing that the thoughts you were having were unreasonable or unwarranted? And that's the situation that I did with my own life. And those are the situations that I literally try to guard from happening, because it's easy to have these, especially if you're not feeling well, you're having a bad day. And how many times do we have bad days where we start now thinking about all the other things that might have been going bad in the day? And those are the type of things that I really wanted to say that we should guard about. So I think I'm going to probably just end with this here, your spoken words. And then tomorrow I'll go ahead and continue with some of the highlights from the book, Emergence of Me, and just kind of continue to go through some of the highlights that really stick with me as far as why I had to write this, and hoping that I can help someone else and be a blessing in someone else's life who may have gone through, may be going through, may be in the midst of it. come to understand how important it is for us to know who we are, to have the courage to turn around and change if we need to change, but be the best version of who God created us to be. Thank you so very much for joining me today.